In 2024, Phil Foden was untouchable.
And it's Foden! And the left footer!
Players' Player of the Year, Writers' Footballer of the Year, the best midfielder in the Premier League. 27 goals, 12 assists, the kind of season that announces the arrival of an elite player. Pep called him the most talented player he'd ever coached. England called him their future. The football world called him the heir to De Bruyne's throne. And this was just 18 months ago. Today, Phil Foden is watching from the sidelines. He was subbed off at halftime in the Manchester derby, started just one game in the whole of March, and through it all, he's been watching a £65 million replacement take his position and his minutes. So what happened? Was it a tactical shift? His off-field problems? The physical decline critics have been whispering about? Or is it something simpler? Before we talk about what went wrong, we need to remember just how good Foden was. In 2023-24, Phil Foden was the best player in England. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. He won trophies, earned the PFA Player of the Year, voted by his peers. The players he dominated all season looked him in the eye and said, "You were the best." He also won the FWA Footballer of the Year and the Premier League Young Player of the Year again. That season he dragged City out of games and eventually to their 4th consecutive league title. 17 goals, 8 assists, numbers that would put him alongside the very best. But it wasn't just the stats, it was how he played. Foden had found his role, the second striker position behind Haaland, drifting between the lines, arriving late in the box, creating chaos in spaces defenders couldn't track. He wasn't just competing with De Bruyne anymore, he had finally replaced them. Pep managed Messi before, and to call Foden the most talented player he has worked with? That's not a throwaway compliment, that's a verdict from the greatest manager of his generation. Manchester City won the Premier League. Foden was the engine. Everything flowed through him. Everything clicked around him. And here's the thing, Foden wasn't just a one-season wonder. He'd been building towards this for years. Academy product, patient development, waiting behind Silva, behind De Bruyne, learning the system until it was his turn. And when his turn came, he didn't just take it, he owned it. At 24 years old, Phil Foden looked like the future of Manchester City for the next decade. The heir apparent, the homegrown king, the player Pep would build the next era around. So, what happened? How does a player go from the Player of the Year to benched behind a January signing? How does the most talented midfielder in England become an afterthought in his own team? The answer starts with a season most people have already forgotten. The 2024-25 season was supposed to be Phil Foden's coronation. He'd just won every individual award in England. He was 24, entering his prime. The next 5 years were supposed to be his. Instead, it became a disaster. 7 goals, 3 assists, a fraction of what he produced the year before. The numbers told the story, but they didn't explain it. At first, people blamed fatigue. Foden had played almost every game the previous season. Premier League, Champions League, England duty. No rest, no breaks, just football, football, football. Then came the Euros. England's golden boy arrived in Germany carrying the weight of the nation. Yet he looked empty, sluggish, a shadow of the player who had just dominated the Premier League. He wasn't injured, he wasn't unfit, he just wasn't there. But fatigue wasn't the whole story, because behind the scenes, things were falling apart. In May 2025, Foden said he had a lot of things going on off the pitch mentally, and added sometimes there's things in life bigger than football. Those personal issues that followed him from the summer into the season, distractions that no amount of talent can outrun. The details don't matter, what matters is the pattern. A player who thrived on rhythm, on confidence, on feeling untouched, suddenly looked vulnerable, human, fragile. And on the pitch, it showed. The runs that used to be perfectly timed arrived a second late. The touches that used to be silk became heavy. The pressing that Pep demands from every player, it disappeared. Critics started whispering, not about form, about desire. Does Foden still want it? Has success made him soft? Is this who he really is when things get hard? Manchester City struggled that season, and for the first time in years, Foden wasn't the solution. He was part of the problem. The Player of the Year became a passenger, and Pep noticed. By the end of the 2024-25 season, the questions weren't about whether Phil Foden was world class anymore. They were about whether he could get back there. And then came this season, and for a moment, just a moment, it looked like he had. When the 2025-26 season started, Phil Foden looked different. At the start of the season, Phil Foden was in excellent form and regarded as one of Manchester City's best players, recording 11 goal involvements, more precisely 8 goals and 3 assists in a short span to start the campaign. The confidence that had drained out of him the previous year, it flickered back to life, and Pep gave him a chance. Foden started alongside Ryan Cherki, Manchester City's other new weapon. The two rotated positions, one drifted right and the other played behind Haaland, but equally they were fluid, creative, promising. It wasn't the Foden of 2023-24, but it was something, enough to make people believe that the nightmare was over. But here's what nobody paid attention to. Even when Foden played, something was off. The pressing wasn't there. The defensive work Pep demands from every attacker, inconsistent. Some games he tracked back, others he drifted. And Pep sees everything. It all started with a 2-0 loss to Manchester United earlier this year. Foden was shipped off at halftime after a poor opening 45 minutes, and since then, he never recovered. Then in a crucial game against Nottingham Forest, City needed 3 points. Forest sat deep, waited for their moments, and punished every mistake. But one in particular cost Manchester City their night, and it was from Phil Foden. Take a look at this moment.
Gibbs right.
Notice the sluggish tracking back, ball watching while his man ran free, the kind of defensive laziness that makes Pep's eye twitch. That moment led to Nottingham's goal. Manchester City drew 2-2, and after the game it was clear to everyone watching, this is not the same Phil Foden. The truth is, it didn't take long for narratives to swell, and we all know Pep can't build a system around someone who doesn't defend. He wasn't injured or tired. Pep was just tired of seeing the lazy attitude, and he removed them. He did not recover from the halftime snub at Old Trafford. It all went downhill after the draw with Forest, and it all got worse for Foden when City's January signing became someone Pep preferred. In January 2026, Manchester City signed Antoine Semenyo for £65 million. At the time, it felt like squad addition, depth, another weapon in Pep's arsenal. Nobody thought it was a replacement. Semenyo came from Bournemouth, fast, physical, direct, a winger who ran at defenders rather than around them. The kind of player who makes defenders uncomfortable in ways Foden never did. Different profile, different skill set, different player entirely. So why would he threaten Foden? The short answer was because Pep was changing. The tiki-taka possession game that defined Manchester City for years, it was evolving, becoming more vertical, more direct, more physical. Pep wanted runners, pressers, players who could defend from the front and sprint in behind without the ball. Semenyo offered all of that. Foden offered none of it. Watch how City play now. The possession-heavy, patient build-up that defined the Guardiola era. It's evolving, becoming more direct, more vertical, more reliant on speed and physicality than technical domination. Pep wants players who can press for 90 minutes without dropping intensity, players who defend from the front, players who sprint into the channels and stretch back lines. Semenyo does all of that without being asked. Foden, he needs the ball to be effective. He needs space created for him. He needs the system to revolve around his strengths. And Pep is no longer building that system. The Manchester derby was where it became official that Pep was done. Pep looked at the pitch and decided he needed something Foden couldn't give. Energy, directness, defensive commitment. Semenyo came on, and since that night, the hierarchy has been clear. Cherki and Semenyo start, Foden watches. Not because they're more talented, nobody would argue that, but because they fit what Pep is building now, and Foden doesn't. Here's the uncomfortable part. Foden hasn't dramatically declined. He's not injured, he's not finished. He's just no longer essential. The role that made him Player of the Year, that second striker position behind Haaland, just doesn't exist anymore. Pep has rebuilt the attack around runners and pressers, not pocket players and creators. And when the system changes, players who don't adapt get left behind. Semenyo didn't take Foden's position, he made Foden's position irrelevant. That's the cruelest part. Foden is losing his place not because someone is better than him, but because someone is more useful in the new version of Manchester City. And Pep has never been sentimental about these decisions. He sold Sane when he didn't fit. He froze out Sterling when the system evolved. He let Bernardo's future hang on uncertainty. Homegrown, academy, Player of the Year, none of it matters if you don't fit the plan. Foden is learning that now. So where does that leave Phil Foden? 18 months ago, he was the best player in England. Today, he's watching Cherki and Semenyo take his minutes, watching Pep build a system that doesn't need him, watching his position disappear in real time. And nobody can agree on why. Some say it's mental, some say it's Semenyo, the new toy, the shiny signing, and some say it's Pep, the manager who has discarded legends before, Sane, Sterling, Bernardo nearly twice. Maybe Pep has simply decided that Foden's time is up, that the excitement has run its course, that loyalty means nothing when the system demands evolution. The truth? We don't know. Maybe it's all three, maybe it's none. Maybe Phil Foden will start next week and score a hat-trick and make this entire video look stupid. But we know this, the player who won everything in 2024 is fighting for his future in 2026. And right now, he's losing.